was a baffling case.
Baffling.
To have missing women in this town of Ashland is a big deal.
A huge
Unusual.
deal. Very, very unusual.
Elizabeth was very naive. She would trust anybody and everybody. She was like, why haven't I heard from her and I can't find her?
The last known images of Elizabeth Griffith were recorded while she was shopping inside this Walmart.
It seemed like a very short time frame that people started to look for Elizabeth, that now Stacey is gone.
Just love to dance and just have fun with the kids. Just a bundle of joy.
She's like, some nice guy stopped to help me.
I told her, let him go. Tell
Yeah.
him to leave. You've got help coming.
Yeah. And
She wouldn't.
But now, a phone call that would change everything. A third woman taken.
There was a female and that she had been held captive.
Sounds like something out of a movie.
Absolutely.
A horror movie.
You can hear her desperation for help.
It's a chilling call.
Come on. Just put the phone down.
Did you know anything about what you were about to face?
No.
And I saw her hand. I saw her outstretched hand through the window.
And then the line goes silent.
Yep.
What is the address to your emergency? 4th Street, Margaret. Howell. That sounds good.
It's 6:48 a.m. in September 2016. Emergency dispatchers receive a 911 call from a terrified woman. She's whispering that she's being held at a house near the laundromat and that her captor is asleep at her side.
Is he in the same room with you? Yes. Does he have a weapon? He's got a taser. Is there any way to get out of the building? I don't know. Without waking him, I'm scared. His room is closed and he needed so he would make noise. And we have officers returning.
Officer Kurt Dorsey rushes to the scene, leaving his siren off so that it does not alert the abductor.
So, what were you doing when the call came in?
We responded from the police station. We were trying to be stealthy. We were told that the suspect was sleeping, so we wanted to approach and not make a bunch of noise. And
You weren't even sure the call was real, right?
I didn't believe it was real at first, just because of the town that we live in. Just not a typical call that we would get in Ashland.
Ashland, Ohio. It's a small city between Columbus and Cleveland, home to more than 50 churches and a large Amish community.
Ashland is a quiet, rural community. There's about 20,000 people who live there. It has a university, a lot of farm field.
So this is Ashland. What can you tell me about the town?
Well, as you can see, it's rolling hills, scenic. A lot of community stuff going on. Football games. The county fair. A lot of farm animals, a lot of competitions and shows for kids to get involved with.
Typical small town where everyone knows everyone, right?
Yes, exactly.
Kim Major has had 23 years of service as a detective in Ashland.
I handled violent crime and I handled sex offenses and child abuse. I'm over 1,000 of those cases.
1,000?
Yeah.
At the time of that terrifying 911 call, the community is already on edge. Just a week before, police discovered that a woman in town had simply vanished. Well, there was a missing person named Elizabeth Griffith.
Yes. Elizabeth was known in our town. I had had contact with her. I think we all had. A lot of the officers would have an eye on her.
She was kind of a vulnerable person, and we helped her quite a bit as a police division.
She used to call them quite frequently. She would call them about anything and everything. Just like, I heard it's going to snow today. Is there any chance that the roads will be closed? She was definitely a character.
Facing mental health challenges, 29-year-old Elizabeth Griffith attended meetings at a peer support center called LifeWorks.
Elizabeth was very bubbly and energetic. The first time I met Elizabeth was at LifeWorks, and she was coming down the hallway, and I was opposite of her. And she was like, hey, you're new here. And I was like, yeah. And she was like, you want to be my friend? And I was like, sure, let's be friends.
She was embraced not just by LifeWorks, but also by her church family.
Elizabeth was a really sweet girl, a simple person. She liked to make people laugh. She liked to sing. She loved to worship. She would raise her hand the highest during worship. Even though she was told she'd sing louder than anyone else. She was very much with the heart of a child. It was a little harder for her to grasp some things sometimes. She was a very loving person and a very loyal person. Certainly financial challenges, certainly medical challenges, mental health challenges.
She lived on her own in her own apartment. She did have a case manager that kind of helped her with daily life struggles. She was always introducing herself to everybody, very outgoing.
The community knew Elizabeth, and she was one of ours, and she was taken care of.
But then, Elizabeth's support team realizes no one has seen her in weeks.
We were at LifeWorks, and the phone rang, and it was Elizabeth's case manager. And she had asked if we had seen Elizabeth lately. She was like, I can't find her. So I called her cell phone, and it just went straight to voicemail, which was highly unlikely for Elizabeth. I was like, something's not right.
I was concerned because where would she have gone? What could have happened?
She wasn't the type of person that would go missing, so we sort of knew something was wrong there.
This is an area where I would often see Elizabeth Griffith walking, and just days before her disappearance, I stopped and chatted with her right up here.
It's a baffling case.
It was baffling. We didn't know if she had taken off or did she meet somebody online and leave. We didn't know if it was suicide. We didn't know where she was.
Everybody was taking to social media, posting pictures of her. Everyone was looking for her. Everybody was praying for her.
Police began to investigate, speaking to Elizabeth's neighbors and friends, and tracing her last known steps.
I began talking with some of the public transit drivers because she would often use public transportation.
Before she disappeared, records showed that Elizabeth had taken the bus to go shopping.
The last known images of Elizabeth Griffith were recorded while she was shopping inside this Walmart.
There's video of her going through the aisles and then waiting for the bus.
She disappeared shortly thereafter, and she wouldn't be the only one. It turns out there's another missing woman in Ashland.
I said, all right, Mom, I love you. I'll talk to you tomorrow. And that was the last we ever heard.
In Ohio are searching for missing woman Elizabeth Griffith, and then they discover there's a second woman in town who also has mysteriously disappeared. 43-year-old Stacey Stanley, a divorced mom, devoted to her sons, Curtis and Corey.
One of my mom's favorite songs was Leonard Skinner's Freebird. It's a pretty good song.
Corey likes simple pleasures, playing music, riding his motorcycle on the highways of Ohio, raising his baby daughter. For him, family is everything, and his bond with his mother, Stacey, has always been particularly tight.
Good boy, you kicked your brother.
How would you describe her?
Very loving and caring, to do anything for anybody, you know, give a shirt off her back if she needed to.
Always there for her kids, calling you consistently. No, she didn't pick up, she'd call you like 1,000 times.
My sister was a very outgoing person.
It's a perfect time to make this wish. Have a happy birthday. Love, Grandma and Grandpa Stanley. I know.
Growing up, we were so close in age, and we shared the same room and stuff growing up.
Karaoke?
She would sing some songs.
Now and then when I see us.
She loved punk rock music and the look, too.
Guns N' Roses, Sweet Child of Mine. I actually had a video of her singing it. When we were kids, I was videotaping her singing that.
So she was not afraid to get on stage?
No.
Perform?
No.
Even as adults, you were pretty close.
Yeah, I'd come home from work, and she'd have big bunches of food made up, and I was like, oh, wow.
I hear she was a great cook. Yeah, I mean, we didn't get looking like this. You know. She fed you well, huh?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And Stacey was a new grandmother to Curtis's 3-year-old daughter.
She was a great grandmother. She was spoiled the hell out of her, for sure.
Just love to dance and just have fun with the kids. Just a bundle of joy.
Stacey lived in Greenwich, Ohio, 30 minutes from Ashland.
Stacey was not from our county. She was from a county that butts up to our county. And she had visited Ashland.
It was September 8th, 2016, when she takes a fateful drive to Ashland to run some errands.
She went to Walmart to get some gardening supplies because she loved doing her gardening. And she also went to get her nails done. And then after that, she was getting some gas and to come back home.
It's around 8:30 at night when Stacey calls her son Corey from this gas station. She's stranded here with a flat tire and needs help.
She was like freaking out, and I said, well, just calm down, we'll find somebody to help you.
Were you worried?
Not necessarily off the rip.
It's just a flat tire, you're
Just a
thinking.
flat tire, yeah.
They're able to find a family friend to meet Stacey at the gas station, but it turns out a stranger has also shown up to help.
She's like, some nice guy stopped to help. I told her to tell him to kick rocks. We got somebody coming to help you. And
She wouldn't?
Well, she's like, oh, he's a nice guy, just help. And so my mom, the person she was friendly and talked to people. This guy takes over and he changes the tire. She offers him a ride home. And I said, all right, Mom. Well, I said, call me in the morning. She's like, okay, I love you. I'll talk to you tomorrow. I said, all right, I love you too, Mom.
But the next day, Corey and Curtis don't receive the usual flurry of calls from their mom.
And then I talked to my aunt, and I'm like, hey, Mom's not picking up. I don't know what's going on. We ended up breaking into her house to get in, and she had 2 little dogs. Just love them little dogs, little chihuahuas.
Her dogs were still in their kennel, so we knew something was going on.
The Huron County Sheriffs had put out a bolo, be on the lookout for her vehicle.
We went driving the roads,
Looking for her.
in case she might have had an accident, was down in a ravine or a ditch or anything. We went looking, driving the routes from Ashland back to Greenwich.
Within hours, Stacey's family spreads out across the streets of Ashland, trying to find any trace of her.
We went down to the gas station, the BP, where she was last seen.
I had printed off like almost 2,000 or 3,000 flyers. They were just passing them out and putting them up everywhere. And there's probably a good 70 of us, at least, out there handing flyers out.
Detective Brian Evans is on patrol in Ashland when he spots the family.
As I was driving around the city of Ashland, I met up with different groups of her family who was actively searching for Stacey at the time. They were in different groups knocking on doors. They were going down to some abandoned buildings.
Well, I came across the radio that somebody had reported her car on East 9th Street in Ashland. We beat the cops over to the car.
And I opened the door, and I looked, and the seat was all the way back. So my mom was short, so it didn't make sense why the seat was back.
I had grabbed her cigarette container, put her cigarette butts in, and I happened to see a Camel filtered cigarettes in there. And I was like, these aren't my mom's. My mom don't smoke these. At this point, it's alarming because somebody else was in this car.
So now it's not just Elizabeth Griffith who is missing in Ashland.
It seemed like a very short time frame that people started to look for Elizabeth, that now Stacey is gone. The odds of 2 women missing at the same time just didn't make sense whatsoever.
To have 2 missing women in this town of Ashland is a big deal.
It's a huge
Unusual?
deal. Very, very unusual for a county this size to have anyone missing, much less 2 women missing.
The community had concern. The word was starting to spread around.
We were like, what's really going on? It's Ashland. Like, stuff like that doesn't happen in Ashland.
Then, a heart-stopping clue in a window at the back of the house. Sounds like something out of a movie.
Absolutely.
Oh.
7-11-22
I'm a 911 dispatcher from Ashland Police Department. I've been a dispatcher for 26 years.
What is your typical day like?
I go to work, sign into all the computers. We usually have 6 to 8 screens depending on what center you're at. Answer calls. You never know when the call will come in or what kind of call it's going to be.
Your most memorable call?
Probably this one.
911. What is the address to your emergency?
September 13th, 2016. 6:48 a.m.
Yep, end of my shift.
By September 13th, 2016, Elizabeth Griffith had not been seen for a month. Stacey Stanley for 5 days. You're working the dispatch and you get that call.
At first I couldn't hear her. It was real quiet. She was whispering.
Problem?
She says, I've been abducted.
Yes.
Your reaction?
My reaction was to find out where she was at first, to get her out of there.
20 West 81st Street.
The dispatcher had told us that there was a female and that she had been held captive somewhere near a laundromat. So we immediately start to drive towards the area of the call.
Where's she at now? Where's she sleeping at? In the bedroom.
I asked her more questions, trying to get as much as I could before he woke up.
You have to be calm, but there's an urgency.
Yes.
The woman says she's calling from her abductor's phone.
He had fallen asleep at some point, and she was able to secure this phone.
You couldn't trace the call back then?
Couldn't trace the call. This was a flip phone. It was not coming back to a location.
Do you need an ambulance? Are you bleeding from anywhere? Where were you bleeding from? You don't have to talk if you don't need to, okay?
Why couldn't she get out on her own?
Well, he had taken the doorknobs off, apparently.
As Officer Dorsey heads to the scene, there's a problem. How to find her? The caller does not know her exact address, but she tells 911 she's being held captive in a house next to this laundromat. The problem for police is that there are two very similar houses in this area. There were two houses right here?
Yes. Two identical houses.
And you didn't know which one?
No, they were nearly identical, both the same color, same shape, 2-story. We had no idea which one.
They can't just gang bust into a house. What if he'd have woke up with a weapon and hurt her? So they had to find her quietly, so they were outside looking for her.
So how do you approach the house knowing that the captor is asleep?
So we first started to just look in windows to see if we could see anything. Just check different doors to see if we can pinpoint which house she's in.
As police conduct the search, there's a heart-stopping moment when the caller says she has awakened her abductor.
Woke him up. Just shut the phone down.
You can hear the sheer terror in her voice when he wakes up.
Yep.
And then the line goes silent. It must have seemed like
yes,
that.
Forever.
What's going through your mind?
I'm just praying they find her.
Five agonizing minutes later, she's back.
Yep.
Are you still there? Do you hear any officers outside? Okay, they're in the area.
What was it like to hear her voice again?
It was good. Glad she was still there and not her. And he was still sleeping. So that's good.
You can hear her desperation for help.
It's a chilling call.
It's chilling.
I remember as I was checking the doors, panic starts to set in. I wanted to find her so bad. We're going back and forth between the two houses. The dispatcher had told us at some point that she heard a door. I remembered that I had pulled on a door hard and it made a noise that I didn't intend. So I ran around the house that we were currently at and looked towards the direction of the other house.
I said, tell him to come back. She said, hurry.
And I saw her hand. I saw her outstretched hand through the window, and I knew at that point she was in there. I would have gone through the wall to get to her.
A hand right on the window. That's pretty eerie. Sounds like something out of a movie.
Absolutely.
A horror movie.
So we went to the door. It was locked, and I asked the dispatcher to relay to her that she needed to unlock the door.
Can you unlock the door at all?
She's able to unlock it, and we're able to open it.
Where is he? Still sleeping? Yeah. Okay, they have her.
It took 19 long minutes to get her out. What was it like when you finally hear Detective Dorsey?
It's the best sound ever. I was glad because the officers were safe. She was safe.
You smiled a little because you're proud of her.
Yeah, proud of her.
What a relief. What was it like when you came face to face with the victim?
I'll never forget the way that she looked at us. She looked shocked, like she had seen a ghost. She was fully nude. I don't think I've ever felt so much relief to find her. Divine intervention and a good dispatcher led us to that house and ultimately that door.
So now, police need to find out what happened in this house.
Where is he? Still sleeping? Okay, they have her.
With the terrified 911 caller safely in their custody, police turn their attention to her abductor, a 40-year-old man identified as Sean Great. The dramatic moment when he's apprehended is heard on that open line from the 911 call.
Once we got Mr. Great into custody, he was handcuffed. He ended up in my car. So I began interviewing Mr. Great.
And how do you know her again?
We spend a lot of time lately together. We go eat lunch every day.
The victim, a 36-year-old woman police identify as Jane Doe to protect her privacy, is transported to the Ashland Police Department. Police are desperate for information, no easy task, as the woman was traumatized and still in shock. But Ashland Police have a secret weapon. Enter Detective Kim Major.
Kim is the best interviewer that I've ever seen. She's able to speak with anyone, whether that be small kids or a violent criminal.
I was the only female detective for the majority of my career. Is it good? Is that good?
Major balanced the demands of detective work with the responsibilities of being a mother to 3. That morning, Detective Kim Major is in the shower getting ready for work, and she misses 2 phone calls from her captain at the Ashland Police Department.
And I called him back and said, well, he gruffed at me and said 2 calls and a text. And he said, there's been a kidnapping. We've rescued the woman, and I need you to come in and interview her.
You come to the station, and what happens?
The victim was taken into my office at the end of this hallway, and that's where I spoke with her.
She had been tortured emotionally and physically.
Yes, she had. So, bring her to my office.
The effects of the woman's harrowing ordeal were immediately apparent.
The first thing I noticed is her appearance, of course. I could see that she had been victimized. The second thing I noticed was I could smell the scent of her perpetrator. His testosterone.
You could smell him?
I could.
What did you learn about Jane?
I learned that she had met Sean Great. She eats her noon meal at what we call the Croc Center. They provide free meals at noon. Jane Doe would eat there sometimes, and that's where she met Sean Great.
He was like my brother, my older brother, and he's kind of goofy, but he struck me as kind. When I would run into him at lunch, and if neither one of us was doing anything, we'd just walk around Ashland.
This is a woman so strong in her Christian faith that no man's phone number is in her phone. Not one. No man crosses the threshold of her door.
He let me know that he would be interested in more, but I told him that I wasn't interested in, in beyond friends.
Kim was speaking with Jane Doe, and our captain at the time, Captain Lay, was speaking with Sean Great in the interview room.
David Lay, you are Sean Great.
At the same time Jane Doe and Sean Great were being interviewed at the station, Detective Brian Evans was part of a team sent back to search the house where Jane had been held captive.
We went upstairs. The mattress in the bedroom looked like a dirty used mattress that was just found somewhere and used as a mattress. And then there were some restraints, as in tied clothing, tied to different areas of the mattress to where it looked like that's where Jane Doe was possibly tied up.
So just how did Jane Doe end up a prisoner in this house of horrors? The pair had been out for one of their regular walks and ended up at the house where Sean Great had been staying.
He told her that he had some clothes for her. She also had bagged up some food for him. And she said it was against her better judgment to walk through the door because it's unlike her. But she did.
He just started showing me the clothes, and I remember him asking if I had an extra Bible because he didn't have one, so I got him one.
So she sat down to read the Bible, and as she's reading, he began to pace. And then he charged towards her, grabbed the Bible from her hands, ripped it from her hands.
Jane Doe tells Detective Major that at that point, Sean Great attacked her.
I tried to push him away and get up. I was just doing everything, trying to kick, punch, but everything I did, he just did it so much harder.
And then what did he do to her?
He sexually assaulted her. And her words were every way imaginable.
He would always bind my wrists, my legs, at times.
The details were horrifying, but the interview takes a sudden turn when Jane Doe mentions the name of Elizabeth Griffith, one of two missing women police had been searching for.
She lived in the building next to me. Sweet, but like a child. Sean and I were playing badminton in the front yard, and Elizabeth saw us and came out. I think she just started, talking with us, and I don't know if I introduced her or she introduced herself.
Police discover there's a vital link between Jane Doe, Sean Great, and Elizabeth Griffith. All three of them would frequent this community center where they'd get free meals. That connection sets off alarm bells. Was it possible that this man, unknown to law enforcement in Ashland, Sean Great, was also involved in the disappearance of Elizabeth Griffith?
When I stepped out of my office, my captain said, "Listen, I need you to go in and talk to him about what Jane Doe told you. Can you go in and see if you can nail down the facts regarding that, see if it parallels what he's saying happened?" "Hey, Sean. I'm Kid Major. Nice to meet you." The last thing he said before I walked in was, "And while you're in there, see if he knows anything about the missing girls."
Did you know anything about what you were about to face? What did you do?
Well, I walked down this hallway. I was told to go ahead and interview him, and this is where the interview room is. And when I came in, he was seated right here.
He's right here.
Yeah. "Hey, Sean. Kid Major. Nice to meet you."
Before you came in here, did you have any idea what you were in for?
No. I had no idea.
You had your own recorder?
Yes.
And what did you do?
I took the recorder and just dropped it down my top.
Because you wanted a record of this?
Yes, just a backup in case something happened, and in this case, it proved valuable.
Valuable indeed, because the video system stopped recording shortly after Detective Major began interviewing Great. That means her backup was the only recording of the interview while the system was down.
We're going to get these cuffs off you.
You decided to take off his handcuffs.
Yeah.
Why?
I need to drop all of those things that would inhibit somebody's ability to relax or feel comfortable.
But out of his handcuffs, he could attack you.
He could.
You weren't thinking about that?
At that time, no.
In a city where law enforcement routinely interacts with the community, Sean Great was not known to police.
I had never heard his name. I had never had any tips about him. We didn't know him.
Sean Great had grown up in Marion, Ohio. That's about an hour from Ashland.
He was a good-looking kid, charming.
With Sean Great, people talk about his eyes. They're piercing blue eyes. And women will talk about that. That's how they recall him. Or his eyes.
He just had one of these very likable personalities. Very soft, laid back, very unassuming type of personality. And it was just one of those things that you just almost couldn't hardly not like.
Sean never told me much at all about his background. I knew he had either a sister and a brother. I had never met his dad. He told me his mom abandoned him. He absolutely hated his mother.
Christina Hildreth dated Sean Great for 5 years.
I think before we moved in together, he had worked at, it was a motel, Super 8 or something in Marion, and he might have worked there a couple of weeks. That was about it. Other than that, I've never known him to have a job.
While unknown to police in Ashland, Sean Gray had become a familiar face at the Croc Center.
He would just come to our hot meal and just kind of integrated himself into the community meal and the community that attended and started making friends. I'd see him around town, walking and talking with people, and he just really kind of absorbed what we had.
What did he say about Jane?
At first, he tried to present it as if she wanted him. Like they were in a relationship, that she wanted the sexual piece of this.
Well, one of the reasons why she said she wanted to marry me, because she was horny that day.
Eventually, as we peel that away, you realize she didn't want this.
Just as empathy had helped in speaking to Jane Doe, Major was using a similar approach, hoping to gain Gray's trust. And slowly, he begins to open up, sharing details about his childhood.
May have started when my mom left me with a child. I come home from school and she's gone, but I don't blame her. I used to, but...
Why did she leave?
She had to go find herself.
I'm sorry.
It's fine.
Does he admit that something happened with Jane Doe?
Eventually, he begins to talk about what happened and admits in layers. He admits that he had held her there captive, admits that he had tied her up. I mean, looking at this whole thing, he forced her to have sex. She didn't want to.
I abducted her. And I raped her.
And there it was. Detective Major had the confession, but the confession itself only raised more questions.
As he spoke about what he did to Jane Doe and would use the words kill, that he strangled her, you begin to realize this may be way more than Jane Doe. And earlier in my career, I probably would have stopped right at Jane Doe. Now, I realize it's a partial confession.
Detective Major brings the conversation back to Elizabeth Griffith, that missing woman who Jane Doe said also knew Sean Great.
We can't find Elizabeth. We'll find her, but we can't right now. Hey, look at me. Look at me. I need your help. That goes on for just so long enough that he's acting like he has no idea what I'm talking about.
And then suddenly, Sean Great makes a shocking revelation.
I'll be able to take you to her, maybe someone else.
How many are there?
Say many.
Now, detectives knew Elizabeth Griffith and Stacey Stanley were missing, but now Sean Great seems to be talking about even more women.
I'm ready to try to get my lethal injection, but I'll tell you first.
Then things take a bizarre and frightening turn.
I'm thinking, this is not good.
At what point do you realize I might be dealing with a serial killer? You're in this very room alone with a serial killer.
The magnitude was becoming clearer to me. Whatever he did, I'm going to get it.
Police are now investigating whether they have a serial killer on their hands.
Are there any other girls in the house right now?
He had cut a slit into the back of the couch, and he was crawling in and out of the couch, and he would come out at night.
He says, "Meet the other me." I just froze. The first thing in my mind is a monster. You don't normally have a killer show you how he did it.
He said, "I'll just do it on you." Kind of grin. I get up behind him like this. He locks this in. He locks this arm in. He locks this head here, and then he just pushes down and squeezes.
Wow.
At one point, he told me it was probably a good thing I had him in custody, because there would be more.
We knew that she was relatively young. She had perfect teeth. We had somebody that had confessed to her murder.
A fellow inmate tells you that Sean Gray, that he wants to kill you.
No, that desire. I'm feeling it now.
Sean Great has confessed to his assault on Jane Doe, but what about those two missing women in Ashland? It's an urgent race to find out. Is he behind their disappearance? And can they be saved?
And as you continue interrogating Sean Great, time is of the essence.
Time is always of the essence. I feel like I'm against the clock to get him to say something before I say the wrong thing and cause them to stop talking at all.
And you're thinking he might have these two missing women and they could still be alive.
Absolutely. I start pressing him on where Elizabeth Griffith is. Can you take me to where she is?
You can't.
Why? Sean, look at me. If I take you in my little detective truck, can you take me out?
I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm looking for Elizabeth's body. Can you take me to it?
She's dead?
But suddenly, Sean Great reveals shocking information that maybe he can bring Detective Major to somebody else.
I might not be able to take you to her. Maybe someone else.
How many are there?
What did you say, many?
What?
I don't know. There might not be none.
He says he might not be able to take me to her, meaning Elizabeth, but might take me to someone else, and that there might be many or there might be none.
So he's playing with you.
Possibly he's wanting to tell me something. Will you take me there? Where she is? Where are you going to take me in Mansfield? Where there's another girl?
There's a girl. But I met it.
What happened? She's gone?
She's been gone.
Is she in a house? What is she in?
What?
Alright, what's her name? Candace Cunningham?
He tells you there's someone else, and that woman is Candace Cunningham.
Yes.
Did you know who she was?
I did not know Candace. Candace hadn't been reported missing.
As her colleagues watching in the other room start looking for information on Candace Cunningham, Detective Major continues to question Sean for more information. After all, the two missing women in Ashland are still unaccounted for.
As I watched the interview, I could see that Sean was warming up to Kim. He was telling her more. Her methods were working.
What was it about you that he connected with, felt comfortable with?
He told me that I had empathy, that he could see it. Who else?
Now. Where I came from.
Yeah? Is somebody in there?
Yeah.
Who is it? Is it Elizabeth? Where is she in there?
So that Sean admits to you that Elizabeth's body is in the closet, in that same house where he was holding Jane Doe.
Right in the same house. When he said that, I didn't know if she was alive or not.
As Kim's interviewing, I called Detective Brian Evans to tell him that Elizabeth was upstairs in a closet. He had been working on a search warrant at the house.
I was surprised by the information because officers had cleared the house. We headed upstairs to see if we could locate Elizabeth. This is an abandoned house that has old wooden steps. You could see their footprints going upstairs.
One of the guys on scene said, there is no closet upstairs. That detective went directly to a particular room and looked up and realized there was a concealed closet.
There was a bunch of clothing just all over this closet.
There were stuffed animals piled down below.
As we started pulling away the clothes, you could see the fly activity, and there was an electrical tape that was taped up around the sides of the door to help from the smell to come from the door. And once the doors opened, there was another large pile of clothing. You could see the fly activity again all over the clothing.
Elizabeth's body was underneath all this.
Yes, it was.
What goes through your mind at that point?
Well, that it was a tragedy, and once the clothes were removed, her body, she was actually kind of like face down and hog-tied back.
Chilling.
Yes, it was very sad.
Sean tells Detective Major that the night of Elizabeth's murder all began when he says she called him late at night because she couldn't sleep.
She came over about 11 o'clock when she brought over Yahtzee, late Yahtzee. It just happened after truck chargers reached up to check her.
We just didn't think it was possible. It couldn't have been Elizabeth. It just couldn't have been. And then we found out it was.
And we just sobbed and sobbed because it had come to a conclusion that we were not going to see our friend again.
You're in this very room alone with a serial killer.
Yes. As it progressed, the magnitude was becoming clearer to me.
I guess I'm ready to go ahead and get my lethal injection. But I'll tell you about it first.
He's bought into me. He's going to talk to me. Whatever he did, I'm going to get it.
Rape of Doe, the murder of Elizabeth Griffith, and knowledge of the disappearance of Candace Cunningham. But Stacey Stanley is still missing, and Detective Major has a hunch he knows more about her as well. As the hours tick by in this very same room,
Yes,
you got more and more out of him.
that's right. It just kept coming out in layers, a little bit more and a little bit more. Are there any other girls in the house right now? Yeah?
One down in the basement.
Down in the basement? What's her name?
Stacey.
He tells me that Stacey Stanley was in the basement of the home under a pile of trash.
Now remember, Stacey was that missing woman whose family had been searching for her after she was seen with a stranger changing her tire at that BP gas station. Sean says he was that stranger, and he tells Detective Major his version of what happened that night.
She came home with me. We kind of hit it off pretty good. And then it didn't. It was hour fast. I just snapped on her.
The mood at the police division was shock. It was just chaotic and pretty unreal.
Then you get another disturbing call. There's another body in the basement.
Yes, if you go down the basement, there's space behind the stairwell. There was multiple bags of trash stacked up, and underneath the trash is where Stacey was. There was actually a picture of just her hand kind of sticking out of the trash, like eerily saying, like, I'm here.
Have you ever seen anything like this in all your years of police work?
No, I've been on other homicides and other tragic cases, but not to this magnitude, no. A lot of our local community was coming to the area, and you could tell the feeling in the air was that the people knew that we found bodies in that house.
What started as a rescue ended with a gruesome discovery that only got worse. Now families wait to find out if those women are their loved ones.
I got a phone call saying I need to get to Ashland ASAP. I don't want it to be my mom. I mean, nobody wants it to be their mom. I don't get to watch her grow old. My daughter don't get to watch my daughter grow up.
Honestly, I think that my sister's in that house and they're not going to know anything for a couple hours.
They pulled out a couple pictures. They're like, do you guys recognize that? I said, yeah, that's my mom's picture.
It was very traumatic, having to see that, and that was my mom laying there,
It's bad enough what he did, but for some reason, thinking that he put her under trash makes it worse.
That still touches you.
It does. For me, the day that cases don't impact me would be the day that I need to pack it in.
You want it to touch you. Do you want to
I
feel
want it to touch me. I mean, I don't want to be in an interview, lose control, but these ladies mattered.
But Detective Major had to put aside her emotions. Sean Great had confessed to a third woman named Candace Cunningham.
Candace was a little, tiny, vibrant woman, lived in the next county over, Richland County. Candace had not been reported missing, and Candace had dated Sean Great.
On her Facebook page, Candace posts about Sean Great, including this picture, and later writing, "I am back with Sean and love him." It was just 1 month before her murder. In the interrogation room, Sean describes strangling her in an abandoned house after an alleged altercation.
3 o'clock in the morning, I hit in the face with a bag of tobacco. I just snapped.
After I was done interviewing him, which went all day, I had asked him if he would take me to where Candace's body was.
What's going through your mind?
I was hoping that he wouldn't shut down from just having the emotions of going back to that place. So, this is the scene where the home was, where Candace Cunningham was living with Sean Great. So there was a home here. He burned it down after he murdered her in the home.
Investigators took video of Sean that day as he led them to where he left Candace's body.
He's agreed to come out and show us where he put the body.
She killed her in a house that was here and then dragged her body toward the ravine.
Prior to burning that down, he carried her body wrapped up in a blanket. He carried her to the ravine.
Yeah, I remember these rocks.
How far down?
Carried her across the creek and up, straight up the hill, about maybe 10 to 15 feet to the road.
While you were here, Sean got emotional.
He did. When we rolled up, I actually had to ask him, "Are you okay? You okay?" And he said it was hard. It was hard.
What was it like to finally find this woman and give it some closure?
Like I wanted to go down to the ravine and rescue her, but she's gone. It's frustrating that she hadn't been reported missing, that no one even knew at all.
As the investigation continues, Sean performs another show and tell.
Just lost it. I just turned her around.
Revealing more deadly secrets.
During the interrogation, you asked Sean to show you his strangulation technique.
He said, "I'll just do it on you." Kind of grin. Woman being held captive. Police are now investigating whether they have a serial killer on their hands.
Sean Michael Great is being held for kidnapping tonight, and the sheriff's department says he should be charged with murder.
Lord, I told that Undertaker, please drive slow.
The community response was one of just complete shock. People had no idea that something like this could happen here.
Even though I don't know them, we are thinking about them and praying for them.
All I kept saying was, "Oh my God." And it was just like, this is unreal. No, we're not talking about the same guy.
I was just like, how? I knew he had this anger, but when I first found out, I couldn't comprehend that this was something he had actually done.
Those closest to Great were surprised to learn of his killing spree, despite them having their own chilling experiences with him. His former girlfriend, Christina Hildreth, says Great once spied on her from inside her sofa.
He says, "I've been living in the couch." He said, "When you came in, you were sitting on me. I seen everything you did." He had cut a slit into the back of the couch, and he was crawling in and out of the couch, and he would come out at night. That was terrifying.
And his friend Tim Dennis claims he had a text exchange with Sean that made his blood run cold.
He had, just out of the clear blue, asked me if he could borrow $20. And I told him no. All of a sudden, here's this whole slew of scathing messages. And he told me, bed bugs are coming to your house, roaches are coming. And then he makes this statement. He says, "Meet the other me." Honestly, I just froze. The first thing that hit my mind is a monster.
2 days after his arrest, you go interview him again now with Detective Evans.
Yes, I did. I asked him if there was anything else he wanted to get off his chest.
Anything else you thought about that you haven't talked about? What's that?
Cold case. They've already found her. I'm thinking her name's Dana. I told her to forget her name.
He tells me that he had killed a woman in Marion County
10 years earlier.
10 years earlier.
Dana.
He didn't know her name for sure.
Who was she?
She had come to his mother's house to sell magazines.
Sean says he got upset because the woman didn't deliver the magazines that Sean's mother had ordered.
He said he was in town and just happened to see her, so he said he made up a story that he had money back at his house.
So that's when I fronted her. So you're gonna rip me off like you did my mom? Dad. That's when I jumped her out right here.
Said he placed her out by some railroad tracks. Her body had been found years and years ago. She just hadn't been identified.
Detective Major knows authorities will need to figure out who this Dana is, but they press on, probing Sean about key details of his other murders.
Detective Evans and I decided we might try to have him show us how he strangled the victims. So Brian Evans says, would you do this on a doll?
And what did he say?
He said, I'll just do it on you. And kind of grinned. I was like, okay. And then we got up.
So I roll the camera.
Okay, this is Detective Major. We have Detective Evans in the room, Sean Great in the room.
Then he kind of just gets behind Brian and does a hold on him.
Brian just like to grab her.
I look at Brian's eyes and I'm thinking, this is not good.
So, I'm you, and you're Sean. What did he do?
So he just came up behind. He said, I'd get up behind him like this. And then he comes back. He locks this in. He locks this arm in. He locks this head here. And then he just pushes down and squeezes.
Wow.
And at that point, I kind of mouthed over to Detective Major that I'm not doing that again.
You could have lost consciousness in seconds. He could have killed you.
I didn't put a whole lot of thought into that. It just went to getting the evidence, and I feel I have some training that I don't think he would have killed me.
Police don't normally get this kind of demonstrative evidence. You don't normally have a killer not only confess to a crime, but then actually show you how he did it.
How'd you know to stop? I'm sure it like this.
This morning, suspect Sean Great held on a $1 million bond and facing double murder and kidnapping charges.
You understand the nature of the 3 offenses charged in the complaint, Mr. Great?
Yes, Your Honor.
He seemed kind of unalarming. I could understand why maybe women were trusting of him or went with him willingly, because he didn't look like a monster.
Law enforcement is on the hunt to figure out just who is this unidentified woman Sean Great has confessed to killing 10 years prior in neighboring Marion County.
Nobody knew who she was. It was a great mystery.
Investigators reached out to the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation.
My name is Samantha Molnar. My position at Ohio BCI is a forensic artist. I can do a clay facial reconstruction from the skeletal remains. We can actually 3D print an exact replica of the skull. I basically start doing the clay reconstruction from there, building the muscle structure on the face, placing the average tissue depth markers, and then kind of finishing the sculpture. We did receive some tips, but none of those tips led to an identity.
Detective Kim Major isn't just trying to crack the Sean Great case. She also has to juggle the full-time job of being a mom to 3 active kids.
All right, hook her up.
I'm always worried about her, no matter where she is. I would stay up at night, me and my little brother would, and just wait till she gets home.
I try to say that I am not overprotective of my kids, but I'm sure I am.
But could this case put Kim or her family in grave danger?
When the case was going on, our fair kicked off. I get a phone call, and it's a man, and he said, I have your daughter. On Friday night, my husband coaches football. I actually took my younger kids to the football game, and I sat there, which was also surreal, seeing all the things around me and the lights.
People are happy.
Happy happy, they're cracking the helmets. The band, watching my husband, hearing the whistles.
Friday Night Lights.
It's Friday Night Lights. That's small town America. I brought my kids home, put them to bed.
That's when Detective Major's oldest son, Corbin, who's preparing to enter the police academy, comes into the room.
He's like, "What's going on, Mom?" I said, "Sean Gray builds sports all over the place. He's like my guy. He stays in these things. But there's one in particular he keeps talking about."
We had a fort in the woods, and she explained to me where it was. And I remember there was a body recovery within a quarter to a half mile that deemed a drug overdose right on a gas line.
I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Yeah, there was a woman that died of an overdose, and they dumped her body there."
We also just learned a body was found in Ashland County. Police say a gas company worker found the body behind a tree on County Road 1908, just south of Route 30.
And he said, "Hold on a second."
I kind of marked out where she thought his fort exactly was. I kind of marked the distance. It was on the same county road. I was like, there's no way this is just a coincidence. This has to be from him. It's just, there's no way it's not.
I said, "Honey, it's an overdose and a dumping." And he said, "That's because of her lifestyle. And people assume it's that." He said he did it. You have to go talk to him. You have to do something. The next morning, went in to the jail, pulled Sean Gray out. There's a case from out in the county, meaning that we found a girl. And we're trying to see if, you'll be honest, if that's something you have something to do with.
Rebecca Lacey.
Yes, sir.
I had a problem with her once.
31-year-old Rebecca Lacey's death had been ruled a drug overdose by the Ashland County coroner. But now, Sean Gray shares what he says happened to her.
We played a game of pool. I went to the bathroom, right? I had some money in my wallet. And that's the first thing I did was just check my wallet. And it was gone.
He said she had stolen a few dollars from him. And he said he had strangled her. He talks about borrowing a car and taking her body out and dumping her in my county.
This is where Rebecca Lacey's body was found.
Yes, right against this tree right here.
When was she found here?
March of 2015, her body was found, and she had been here for a couple months.
Hard to believe that such a heinous crime could have happened to her.
Should be a place of solitude, but instead, it's a place where a woman's body was discarded like she didn't matter.
But Rebecca Lacey's case was public knowledge, and Detective Major needed proof that Sean was actually involved in her death. So she asked him about details from the crime scene. What did Sean tell you about the placement of that memorial?
During the interview, when I had asked him to tell me some things that nobody would know, he said,
I can tell you the truth, because where I found the cross and stuff right now, she wasn't found there. She was found over by a tree.
He said you put the memorial in the wrong place.
Yes. He was right. Nobody would have known that.
With this new information, authorities reopened the Rebecca Lacey case, ruled her death a homicide, and later charged Sean Gray with her murder. Detective Major had formed a unique bond with Sean Gray. You spent 33 hours with Sean Gray.
Yeah, 8 interviews, 33 hours over the course of over a month.
So much so that they've been compared to Clarice Starling and Hannibal Lecter of The Silence of the Lambs.
Starling.
Well, Clarice, have the lambs stopped screaming?
What kind of toll does it take on you?
It may have made me a little more hypersensitive. When the case was going on, our affair kicked off. I get a phone call, and it's a man, and he said, I have your daughter. And I said, who is this? And he won't answer me. And then he hangs up. They contact a guy who made the phone call. It was just a coincidence. The case probably changed how I handled something like that. That was a rough one for me that night.
month after he's arrested, there's another chilling development. A fellow inmate tells you that Sean Great is targeting you, that he wants to kill you.
He said that Sean Great told him he was trying to find my gun on my body, that he thought it would be the ultimate to kill me.
This information did not lead to any additional charges against Great, but future meetings between Detective Major and Sean Great took place at the jail, where no weapons are allowed.
How long do you think he was plotting to kill you?
I didn't know that initially. I went into a later interview with him. I said, "Are you still having that hunger that you talk about?" Can I ask you something? Will you be honest? Do you still have thoughts?
About that desire?
Yeah.
I'm afraid the desire probably grew when there wasn't no desire at first, but when it got more, now it's I feel like something that I had to do. I'm feeling it now.
He told you he still had that hunger to kill.
Yes.
Sean Great says he had a hunger to kill. But Jane Doe and the victims' families had a hunger for justice. And now in court, they come face to face with a man they say
Isn't 18, and Sean Great goes on trial at this courthouse for crimes against 3 of his victims: Jane Doe, Elizabeth Griffith, and Stacey Stanley.
It was the trial that everybody was waiting for. They wanted to know if this community, if these families were going to get justice.
This is not a whodunit case. This is a he did it case. The defendant subsequently, over the course of multiple interviews, confessed to every element of every crime with which he is charged.
I ask that you consider that Sean freely and voluntarily gave information during several interviews which implicated himself in several serious offenses.
Jane Doe comes face to face with her abductor, bravely taking the stand against Sean Great, detailing her horrifying ordeal.
It was probably the most crucial testimony in the case.
How was he choking?
With both hands around my neck.
Did he let go?
I think when I stopped struggling and fighting, he asked me if I had enough. And I think I just remained motionless, and so he released his hands.
She testified about the terror that she went through during the time that she was kidnapped and sexually assaulted.
At the trial, they played the audio of your interview.
They did.
Sean.
Yes. I entered the interview room to interview Sean Great. You could hear my heart beating at key times during the interview. Who was that you were talking to on the phone? It made me realize that maybe it affects me physically more than I recognize.
Prosecutors revealed gruesome details about the deaths of 2 of his alleged victims.
People don't understand when you're in that trial, what you see and what you hear, you can't unsee or unhear ever. And those thoughts are always in your mind. You can't forget it.
It was too gruesome. It hurt you that much.
Yeah.
Even talking about it today. Why?
Just what you went through. It wasn't fair.
Sorry.
We, the jury, being duly impaneled, find the defendant, Sean M. Great, guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the offense of aggravated murder.
Sean Great, guilty on 2 counts of aggravated murder as well as rape and kidnapping. But justice is bittersweet.
He devastated so many people. He changed our lives, and he took away not only Elizabeth's innocence, but the innocence of all of us that believed we were safe.
The day of his sentencing, Sean Great addressed the court.
I ask you, maybe forgive me, find your heart someday. I know not today, but someday. This mess, I'm sorry for all human beings to have to listen. Hear this, okay? I'm sorry. I can't change nothing. Believe me, I would. Not for me, but for you guys.
He asked us in court to forgive him, not for him, but for us. And obviously, I haven't forgave him for what he did.
Real justice would be for you to come with me for about 5 minutes, burn in hell,
The victim impact statements were extremely emotional and very powerful. We heard from Stacey Stanley's son and 2 of her brothers.
It doesn't affect just one person when you kill them, it affects everybody. You ever bury your mother? I had to pick a casket out. I didn't expect that this young.
The offender was found guilty. Any sentence of death by lethal injection shall be imposed on Mr. Great.
At the trial, you had justice for Stacey Balloons.
Yeah.
And Stanley Strong. And you released him when he got the death penalty.
Yes, there was quite a few people that showed up out there to show the support for the family, and that we were glad that he got convicted and received the death penalty. I mean, that was what we were hoping for.
In March 2019, Sean Great pleads guilty to the murders of Rebecca Lacey and Candace Cunningham in Richland County. But his first victim remained unidentified.
You are what you eat. So the different things you're exposed to in your environment all show up in your bones. We learned that she likely was from a southern state, somewhere between Texas and Florida.
Then finally, a match.
Now this woman, a victim of serial killer Sean Great, has a face and
In June of 2018, the community of Ashland, Ohio gathered at the site of Jane Doe's frantic 911 call.
Today, that house was finally demolished, bringing closure for residents and relatives of the victims.
Many people felt like they needed to be here today.
After we found out that Elizabeth was one of the people in the house, I would have nightmares about it. And I would see her in the window asking for help. I wanted them to tear it down so bad, and I was so happy the day that they did.
You were there when you saw the house on Covert Court destroyed, demolished.
I was.
What did that feel like?
It was a tangible piece that was destroyed, but the weight of the situation is still here.
2007, the remains of a female.
1 year later, another step forward, a new development in the search for the identity of Great's first known victim.
The preliminary results indicated that the victim was very likely Dana Nicole Lowry of Minden, Louisiana.
So genetic genealogy was able to provide us a family and a potential identity of this person. And what we did next was go down and swab the daughter of Dana. We were able to directly compare the DNA from the daughter to the DNA from the remains to be able to confirm that was Dana Lowry.
Sean Great pleaded guilty to Dana Lowry's murder, so now there are 6 known victims, and only one of them survived, Jane Doe. What would you say to that woman if you were able to talk to her today?
How brave she was. She saved so many people. If she hadn't been brave and did what she did, we wouldn't have caught him. Then how many more women would have suffered?
Kim Major has retired from the Ashland Police Department, and she now works as the Safety Services Director at Ashland University. And she's written a book about the Sean Great case.
I don't want to forget this case. I don't want anyone to forget it. These women could have been anyone.
You titled the book A Hunger to Kill.
Those are his words. He has a hunger to kill.
Do you think there are other victims out there?
I don't think this is a closed book situation. I think information may come out.
We never get to say our goodbyes.
As for the Stanley family, they're still dealing with the tremendous pain of losing Stacey. You miss her still?
Oh yeah. It's been 8 years. I haven't even opened a box or anything of hers. I just kind of put it behind like it doesn't exist to an extent.
What keeps you going?
I know she would want us to go on. And the boys. It just breaks my heart to see what they go through every day.
Are you ready, girlfriend?
And like he just had a new baby.
Grandma? You see Grandma?
And he took her out, set her on his mom's bench at the cemetery.
Hello there. Grandma? talked myself into going out there.
Oh, that was so cute.
She was smiling so big.
It's beautiful.
And that's hard for me to sit and see my daughter never gonna be my mom. Oh, she was a great-grandmother to her first granddaughter, and I'm sure she would have loved mine just as much.
My mom did not deserve that. Any of the women didn't deserve that.
Emergency.
I think we've been burgled and my wife's been attacked. Please, can you send someone quick?
Yeah, I am.
Police have launched a murder investigation after a woman was found dead at her home in Middlesbrough.
I was absolutely terrified, thinking, what if somebody got in my house?
It felt like there was a serial killer at large and you wondered if they were going to do it again.
When a successful pharmacist is found murdered, her devastated husband goes into shock.
No, Jess, come on, baby, wake up.
Baby, wake up. And a community is torn apart.
You won't believe, obviously, what we went through, and the level of betrayal there, it was a shock.
In the northeast of England lies one of Middlesbrough's most attractive areas, Linthorpe.
It's quite an affluent area. Big houses, quite leafy, long driveways, nice cars on the drive, professional people live there.
You know, it's a family area, it's very friendly. Best part about it is the neighbours, you know, we all get on and good community. It's very safe, yeah. Very safe.
In the heart of the community were a couple named Jessica and Mitesh, who owned a pharmacy in the village.
We've got a chemist here actually on our doorstep. It's a husband and wife team, so they work together. The couple are really friendly people, helpful. Whatever you need, they're always there for you to help you out. You know, any advice that you need, they're always there.
Both Jessica and Mitesh were from large Hindu families in West Yorkshire.
We grew up in a joint family, so there was 12 of us in my household.
Jessica was the first child, a happy, calm child. To what I remember, she was a good child, never any bother.
Very fond memories of growing up with Jess, because we were only probably about 18 months apart in age, so quite close together. She was always fun to be around, because she was always happy no matter what, always had a smile on her face.
Jessica had big plans for her future and went to study at Manchester University.
Jessica always said that she wanted to be a pharmacist. She always wanted to help people. That was her thing.
It was at university that Jessica met Mitesh, and the pair quickly struck up a relationship together.
I think Jessica's mum was ill around the time that they got together, and Mitesh was support for Jessica and would, you know, say all the right things, buy her presents, teddy bears, things like that.
He was constantly showering her with gifts. I think she must have had like 50 plus Me To You teddy bears in her collection, because we shared a room. They were like dotted all over the room, and she was just really happy. I got privy to a lot of their evening conversations at the time. Mitesh and Jessica would often be on the phone, and because we were sharing a room, it would be a case of her saying to him, "You put the phone down," and he'd be like, "No, you put the phone down."
They seemed just like a happy couple, or a happy young uni couple.
Jessica's mother sadly passed away, but Mitesh helped her through this difficult time, and the couple soon mapped out their future together, despite some initial resistance.
Initially, when Jessica approached Dad about getting married, he wasn't so ecstatic about it. He didn't think they were a suitable match for Jessica, but Jessica persisted. She insisted that she loved him, and vice versa.
She wouldn't take a no. So, of course, obviously, in this day and age, we know that we can't force our child. And when she says that, "No, Dad, if I marry, it's him that I'm going to marry." But if that's the man she wants to marry, then that'll be it then.
In July 2009, the couple threw a big Indian wedding.
The marriage took place here in my garden. It was the first wedding within the Patel or the Hindu community that had 500 or 600 people.
Newly married, the couple set their sights on a fresh start and set up home among the village community of Linthorpe.
They got a lease on Roman Road Pharmacy and then bought a house on the avenue. lovely big house which needed work doing, so they spent time renovating it and building up their pharmacy, becoming well-known people in the community.
Having both a successful business and a new home in place, there was just one thing missing from their perfect life.
Jessica wanted to be a mother. She's always had a very motherly and a maternal instinct. Being the oldest sibling out of all 6 of us as well, she was always that much more maternal. And she wanted children of her own. I think it's something they'd thought about for years.
Apparently the couple struggled to fall pregnant, so started undergoing a course of IVF treatment, which I can only assume is a really grueling process, and that shows how much they must really wanted a child.
She expressed to me that it wasn't working naturally and that they were going to be starting IVF. All in all, Jessica went through 3 rounds of IVF that were unsuccessful. Each time she would ring me, she would say it didn't work, and she would be heartbroken that it hadn't worked, and I think the emotional distress of it all was just too much. She'd just come back off holiday and we were talking in the evening, and she was just telling me about the IVF and this 4th round. She was so happy because this round was a positive round. She said that it looks like it's going really well. They managed to freeze 3 embryos, and in June, so within a matter of weeks, she was due to have them implanted, and she was so positive they were going to work this time. The happiness in her, I can't even describe how happy she was, because that dream of becoming a mother was just about to materialise for her.
But just weeks before Jessica's dream of motherhood could be realised, everything changed.
It's emergency.
I think we've been burgled and my wife's been attacked. I've just come home and the house is ransacked, and she's just on the floor. She's got duct tape all over her and she's like unconscious.
Right, you said is your wife breathing? Can you feel the pulse?
I can't feel anything. Her hands are really cold. She's got like blood on her nose and stuff dripping out onto the floor. Please, can you send someone quick?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
Okay, listen. The police are outside. Can you let the
It's Jessica.
I'll leave it with you, okay?
Police and paramedics rush into the house and find Jessica in the living room. They try resuscitating her, but she is pronounced dead at the scene.
All we knew was that there'd been a murder. Her husband had came home from work and found her.
Has somebody broken into their home? And is the burglary gone wrong? It was just utter shock that, anything like this could have happened.
In the picturesque village of Linthorpe, the community is waking up, reeling at news of a murder. But the previous morning, May 14th, started out like any other day in the Patel household.
Jessica and Mitesh had been in the pharmacy working. Jessica's dad popped into the pharmacy to speak to them both.
I can see that smile on the day I walked in, which would have been just after 10 o'clock. And I can still see her far back because it was a sort of a deep pharmacy. So I said, I'll be down next week. And she goes, okay, Dad, I'll see you next week. Of course, I did hug her. And I couldn't believe that I would never see her again.
Mitesh worked the early shift, leaving the pharmacy to spend the afternoon at the gym.
Jessica went home. Mitesh pops back to the pharmacy, goes to the local pizza shop to pick up a pizza for the pair of them, texts his wife to say he was getting the pizza, he'd be home shortly.
He came from the chemist roughly around about 7:30. He ordered his pizza and then he left. We were quite busy at the time, so it must have been about 20 minutes, half an hour to come back. I gave him his pizza, and I shook his hand like normal, and he left with the pizza.
Mitesh then goes home and makes the awful discovery.
It's emergency.
I think we've been burgled and my wife's been attacked. I've just come home and the house is ransacked, and she's just on the floor. She's got duct tape all over her and she's like unconscious. Her hands are really cold. Please, Can you send someone quick?
Yeah, I am.
No, Jack, come on, baby, wake up. Baby, wake up.
Cleveland police respond immediately and preserve the crime scene.
We have in the investigation what we call the golden hour. The first hour is critical because the evidence is contained in the scene and it's nearby. You seal the scene totally and nobody, absolutely nobody, including the husband, goes back indoors. Once that's happened, we'll talk to the witness and get the story of events.
News of the attack soon spreads.
I just came back from a friend's house. I couldn't get into the road. Loads of armed police, 2 ambulances. It was like a movie, like something you'd see out of a movie. To be honest, it was absolutely horrendous.
Police have launched a murder investigation after a woman was found dead at her home in Middlesbrough. Officers were called to a house on the avenue in Linthorpe at 20 State on Monday evening. 34-year-old Jessica Patel, originally from the Leeds area, was found with serious injuries at an address in Linthorpe and was pronounced dead at the scene. Detectives are appealing to anyone who may have seen it.
I got a call from my younger sister, and she just said to me that something's happened in Middlesbrough. So I asked her, I was like, is everything okay? She says, I don't know. Dad's gone. We're just going to wait and see when Dad gets there. What he says. So I said, okay. Keep me updated. But when I woke up, I saw my husband sat at the end of our bed. I sort of sat up and I looked at him. And when I looked at him, I thought something's not right. And he turned around to me and he just said to me, I've got no easy way to say this to you, but Jess passed away last night. I think those words in that instant hit me like a ton of bricks. My heart started racing a lot like it's racing now. Just thinking of that moment, I didn't want to believe him. That can't be true. How could this just suddenly have happened? I remember calling Dad, and Dad's confirming that it was true. Something had happened, a burglar had got in, and Jessica had been harmed in the process, and that she'd been killed.
After receiving the devastating news, Jessica's family immediately rally round and make their way to the family home to support her husband, Mitesh.
I walked into their main living room where Mitesh was sat on the sofa, and I went straight over to him, sat down next to him, and he buried his head into my shoulder and was crying. I consoled him and just hugged him and told him that no matter what, we were there to support him. I myself was crying. The whole room, to be honest, was crying. Everyone was upset.
News of Jessica's murder sends shockwaves through the village.
I can't really know that. How can a murder happen in this beautiful place? It's a Linthorpe village area, everyone's friendly, and, all of a sudden you actually hear, right, that she's been killed. And you think, how can somebody do that, especially to a chemist, a pharmacist person who's actually, there to help you.
How it happened to beautiful Jessica, and she was so lovely, and you can't even imagine how someone can kill her. It's a fear. It's a lot. I have no words, really.
It felt like there was a serial killer at large, and you wondered if they were going to do it again.
With such a big story breaking in the close-knit village community, local journalist Felicity Collinson is hot on the case from the off.
I went out to the scene and the street was just really quiet. It was quite an eerie quietness that morning. Cordon had now been moved to just around the house. It was just covering the driveway. There was forensics in white suits walking in and out of the house, carrying cases in and brown envelopes, evidence bags. There was CSI vans, uniformed police officers on guard. I started to knock on neighbours' doors to try and find out what had happened.
With Mitesh too distraught to speak, it was left to neighbours to speculate what had happened. Had someone targeted this young, successful couple out of jealousy?
A lot of people have been saying that it's been a burglary in the house.
Obviously, they look like a wealthy couple because they have quite a wealthy house, and obviously having the pharmacy and everything. Someone who knew them, possibly, had, took a chance to burgle her, maybe thought she had money, maybe jewellery, and that's where it was, and she was just in the wrong place, the wrong time.
We check our doors, even windows and make sure, put alarm on, put everything on to go out, and we don't let our kids go.
I was absolutely terrified, thinking, what if somebody got in my house? What if that happened to me? You know, I've got children. I was absolutely terrified.
Was it somebody who thought that the couple had money with them having the pharmacy? You know, did they have a safe in there where they kept the take-ins? You know, could somebody have broken into that? Or was it somebody who needed or wanted drugs and believed that they may have kept drugs in the house? Or was it a big mistake that they'd got the wrong house?
While a grieving Mitesh stays with the family, police take a closer look at the crime scene. And one thing jumps out immediately. There's no sign of a forced entry. Meaning one thing, Jessica knew her attacker.
If there's no sign of forced entry, it looks like they've got in through an open door, which suggests that the victim would know them and allow them in. Everybody is a suspect are eliminated, without exception. So what we now try and do is eliminate those who couldn't have been there at the time.
With no sign of a break-in, everyone known to Jessica is under suspicion. Could husband Mitesh offer clues as to who his wife may have let in the house?
The neighbour said she opens the door far too easily, far too quickly.
The neighbours saying about her being very nice, very trusting, too trusting, would allow anybody in the house without checking their identity. And therefore we'd have to look at that, because if there's no forced entry, we will be worried about somebody who's just been let in the house. Does she have a relationship with another man or another person?
Police need to identify a timeline of events in order to pinpoint when the killer gained access to the house. So they turn to Mitesh for help.
You'll want to know where he was, what time he went, because the timeline, when he left and when he came home, is significant. Because you need to be looking at perhaps other houses and CCTVs.
Mitesh explains to police that after going to the gym, he had gone out to get pizza at his usual takeaway, before returning home to discover his wife's body.
The husband of the victim seemed like he was a pleasant, kind of like quiet type of guy, wasn't he? He'd just do his work. He'd come, he'd order his food, you know, go home like everybody else.
The pizza parlour's CCTV helps police create an exact timeline of the evening and when Jessica was left alone.
The police came in to the shop and kind of like asked for the camera footage of the husband of the victim, and basically kind of explained what was going on in a small way. They didn't really tell us exactly what was going on, but they just kind of gave us a clue to why they need, you know, what's happened.
He took my camera, CCTV camera, he took it from here. He said, I want to see what's going to happen in here, like when he came, when he go out, that's it.
With Mitesh's movements that evening clear, police are still no closer to establishing who had gained access to their home. But post-mortem results help police identify the cause of death. Could this lead to clues as to her attacker?
It's found that she died from pressure to her neck. There was also suggestion that, from marks to Jessica's neck, that a ligature of some sort had been used.
And in asphyxiation, of course, you've got to look out with something placed over a mouth, over a nose. Was there some other way of stopping the oxygen getting to her? All those sorts of things you expect the examiner to tell you about.
Despite this crucial information, no murder weapon is found at the scene. 3 days into the investigation, and police are no closer to a motive or a suspect.
Police hadn't arrested anybody. I know personally I felt a bit of worry for the people living in that street. You know, I would have felt worried.
But on the 17th of May 2018, things take a dramatic turn.
A man has been arrested in connection with the murder of a woman in Middlesbrough.
Everyone's talking about it, that they've caught somebody.
When we find out who the police have arrested, it's just tragic. Just a tragedy.
In the pretty village of Linthorpe, the close-knit community has been coming to terms with the murder of local pharmacist Jessica Patel. In the days since, Jessica's family rally around a grieving Mitesh.
On Thursday morning, we proceeded to Mitesh's house again, just to lend support. Spent the morning there, but then Dad received a call from the liaison officers asking us if we could return home because they needed to speak with us.
They didn't really tell me what it was for, but something related which I thought they may want some more statements. We come home, sat in that room, and there's the police, the family liaison officers, and they said, Mr. Patel, we have to tell you this. It's Mitesh. And we're arresting him. And I says, hang on, what did you say? And they repeated it. Where I says, look, have you got it right? And they said yes. They assured me that it's him, and as we speak, we're arresting him.
Having just spent the morning comforting Mitesh, his arrest comes as a shock to Jessica's family.
You can't help but think that why would he do it? You know, what reason could he possibly have for having to murder Jessica? At the same time, you're like, have you got the right person? Because if you haven't, that person's getting away.
Yesterday afternoon, police arrested a 37-year-old man in the West Yorkshire police area on suspicion of murder following the death of 34-year-old Jessica Patel in Middlesbrough on Monday. The man remains in police custody.
News of Mitesh's arrest becomes public and locals react in horror. How could this loving husband and pillar of the community have anything to do with such a brutal killing?
It was a bit of a shock, to be honest with you, because we thought of them as, you know, good people, normal people. We didn't think anything was going on in their home.
We were all just so shocked, gobsmacked really. We're still thinking, is this really a husband who's been, you know, arrested for her murder? You know, he's a pharmacist, she's a pharmacist, you just don't expect this at all.
So what had led to the arrest of Jessica's seemingly besotted husband? The man she'd been looking forward to starting a family with.
The police are still searching the house, you know, for evidence and clues. And then there's a breakthrough.
The scenes of crime officers find a hard drive wrapped in clothing underneath the mattress. It has a serial number on it which relates to the CCTV in the house.
When police had previously spoken to Mitesh, there had been no mention of this CCTV. Really, the first thing that you would do, or one of the first things you would do if your wife had been murdered, is think, oh, we've got CCTV. The footage of the killer will be on our CCTV. But there was no mention of this at all from Mitesh.
Police examined the CCTV footage from the hard drive.
It shows that it was switched off or taken or removed 6 minutes before he called the police for 911.
Police rewind the footage to look for any clues earlier in the day, but what they find shocks them. The CCTV shows that at 3:30 p.m, Mitesh returned home from the gym, but never left to get pizza before Jessica came home from work at 7 p.m. Instead, Mitesh doesn't leave the house till 7:42 p.m. and then returns home with pizza at 8:15 p.m. 4 minutes later, the camera is switched off.
This is a crucial piece of evidence because it doesn't show any other person entering or leaving the house other than Jessica and Mitesh. You know, there's no other, you know, intruder or person sneaking around.
Mitesh calls police at 8:24 p.m. to report finding his wife dead. With no sign of anyone else coming to the house, police hone in on their now number one suspect.
So now he becomes the prime suspect. We now need to look at what's the motive. So you'll extend the investigation and you'll also start looking now at all his personal life and personal technology. Has he got an app on his phone? What does his computer say?
And the family computer drops a bombshell discovery.
There was searches on his computer, you know, how to kill my wife.
His searches included employing overdoses of insulin, employing perhaps strangulation.
We've also got searches on his laptop and on his phone about the fact that he will earn £2 million in insurance payouts from his wife's death.
Have police finally uncovered a motive for Jessica's murder?
These were various policies that were taken out at various times. It's interesting to note that the first policy was taken out shortly after Mitesh Patel had begun in 2013 to investigate ways to kill.
But the biggest breakthrough comes when police look at Mitesh's mobile phone, which recorded his heart rate and activity.
Mitesh Patel was not to know that he had this particular app activated on his phone. It tracks not only his steps, but also if he's done any staircases.
The app reveals to detectives that immediately after Mitesh had arrived back at the house, at a time when he said he discovered Jessica's body, he had also gone upstairs for 4 minutes before calling 999.
There was no reason, no innocent reason, for him to have done that. If he was coming home to find his wife's body on the floor, just to the right of the front door.
So what had gone on that fateful day? And what was the truth behind their seemingly loving relationship?
The 14th of May seemed to have begun like most other days. It's right that Mitesh went to work early that morning. Jessica got into work herself an hour or two later. The day continued as other days. Because he'd worked the morning shift, Mitesh Patel left work. He was due to go to the gym at lunchtime, and then he went home. He spent the rest of the afternoon in the family home, and he was there when Jessica got home from work. Of course, he was to lie to the police about that, but he was there when she got home from work shortly after 7.
Detectives established Jessica was killed soon after arriving home. And before Mitesh left the house to get pizza 42 minutes later.
After he'd murdered his wife, he left the house. He then went to the pizza parlor just down the road and ordered a takeaway.
He looked like he was on edge or there was something wrong with him, but we didn't take any notice.
He returned to the family home. He's got to have dismantled the CCTV footage, gone upstairs, hidden it, then come downstairs and then made the call.
It's emergency.
I think we've been burgled and my wife's been attacked.
Confident they have their man, Cleveland police make the decision to charge Mitesh for the murder of Jessica.
To be honest with you, after all that and how I was feeling, and for this to happen, you wouldn't believe, obviously, what we went through.
Having portrayed himself as the devoted husband, running a successful business with his wife and planning to start a family together, the truth behind this perfectly cultured facade was starting to unravel.
When Jessica got married to Mitesh, I think she thought that she was going to have this lovely life with this great guy who'd bought her presents and supported her through her mother's illness. But then the cracks started to show early on in the marriage.
One of the things that she found difficult was that there was not a great deal, if any, sexual activity between her and her husband.
Desperate to start a family, Jessica sought IVF treatment as an alternative way to have children. But this took a destructive toll on her well-being and the couple's relationship.
She was injecting herself in the stomach with steroids and all sorts, and at the time she ended up on antidepressants. She became such an anxious person. Mitesh would quite often blackmail her by telling her that he would leave her and their relationship would be over if she was unwilling to carry on with going through the rounds of IVF. And I think for her, that relationship falling apart would mean her dreams falling apart.
Soon enough, Mitesh's dark side was to reveal itself.
Not long after they were married, Jessica's grandfather gets ill. And in his final days, she wants to obviously spend time with her family and her grandfather. Mitesh wouldn't let her do this. And there's reports that in the car one day, she's sort of like trying to put her case for wanting to go and see her grandfather, and he doesn't want her to, and he apparently hits her. She told a family member that he put his hands around her neck and that it hurt. A pharmacy worker had seen Jessica limping, and apparently Mitesh had thrown a mobile phone at her.
And as time went on, she became not just less bubbly, but more withdrawn and even losing weight. And we all came to understand that which Jessica's family suspected, that she was being controlled and kept apart from her own blood family.
But what could have led this once happy marriage to end in tragedy? Why did Mitesh want to keep Jessica apart from her family? And why did he end her life in such a violent way? 37-year-old pharmacist Mitesh Patel has been charged with the murder of his wife Jessica in their home in the village of Linthorpe. Having pleaded not guilty, the case is sent for trial.
To be honest, we can't believe that he had the audacity to plead not guilty when there was all of this evidence against him. It was just bizarre that he would even try to, get off with this.
In December 2018, the trial begins at Teesside Crown Court.
Well, in my life, I had never gone to a court before, never ever been in a court. We knew it was coming. To be honest with you, I didn't want to be there.
For the first time since his arrest, Jessica's family comes face to face with her alleged killer.
There was a couple of times that he had the opportunity to make eye contact with the family. There was clearly no compassion in him for the fact that he had lost his wife so horrendously. He didn't at any point scream his innocence. I don't think I could ever recall him saying, "It wasn't me, it was somebody else."
The prosecution reveals how Mitesh first appeared to police.
When he was first seen by the police, it was noticed that he had scratch marks down his neck. He was in due course to explain those away as having been as a result of his session at the gym at lunchtime. Well, that was clearly not the case. Further work by the forensic scientists were to reveal that underneath the fingertips of Jessica Patel was his DNA, particularly on the right hand, and she was right-handed. So the picture began to be built up of a struggle in which Jess had fought with her attacker, and clearly that attacker was her husband, whom she had scratched down the front of his neck.
Police have never revealed what they believe to have been the murder weapon until now.
It's found that she died from pressure to her neck. At the scene in the house was a Tesco carrier bag, and tests showed that the inside of the bag had traces of Jessica's saliva and blood in there. There was also a suggestion that from marks to Jessica's neck that a ligature of some sort had been used. So it was surmised that the Tesco carrier bag had been used to suffocate Jessica.
After suffocating her, the court is told Mitesh bound her with duct tape. Crucially for the prosecution case, a reel of duct tape was discovered in the pharmacy, with police believing Mitesh hid it after going to order pizza on the night of the murder.
The jury were given both pieces to look at. They were photographed, and once the tape had been flattened, it was the clearest possible fit, just like a jigsaw puzzle. It was unique.
I was present at the courts every single day. I think 95% of what came out in that courtroom we were unprepared for. There was only 5% of that we went in knowing, and that 95% was devastating to learn what Jessica had gone through, how she had died, what he had subjected her to all those years. It was just devastating.
But the biggest shock was yet to reveal itself in the courtroom. Far from the perfect life they had portrayed to the world, it seems Jessica was harboring a secret about her husband.
Jessica found evidence on her husband's phone of the gay flings he was having and of pornography. He insisted it's banter. He insisted he loved her more than anyone. And if she wanted, he would give up seeing anyone else. He said all he wanted was her and to have their baby.
He had extramarital affairs with men. He was a regular user of the gay app Grindr. He was caught in clinches with another man in the pharmacy, which was recorded on the pharmacy tapes.
But it soon became clear to the courtroom that Mitesh had already found another love abroad.
Messages were found on his phone from a lover in Australia who he wanted to set up another life with.
In 2011 December, on the Grindr app, he met a guy called Amit Patel.
So was Mitesh's dreams for a new life the motive behind the callous murder?
Mitesh cunningly plotted to remove Jessica from the equation. He basically wanted Jessica out of the way so that he could move on and start this new life in Australia with his apparent soulmate.
But not only did Mitesh have a secret lover who he planned to move to Australia to be with, he had an even bigger plan. Mitesh wanted to bring up a child with his new lover. The child he should have been bringing up with Jessica from the frozen IVF embryo.
I can't believe that somebody could go down to that sort of level. He wanted to take this embryo with him to Australia. That was his plan.
After a grueling 12-day trial at Teesside Crown Court, the jury returns its verdict. Mitesh is found guilty of Jessica Patel's murder. He is sentenced to 30 years in prison.
When the judge passed the sentence of 30 years, again, his expression, I watched him the whole time, his expression was blank. Nothing at all. And he was gone in an instant, taken away in an instant.
With Mitesh now behind bars, Jessica's family is slowly coming to terms with life without her.
She was a fantastic older sister to the rest of us. I'm always going to have so many fond memories of growing up with Jess. It's just so unfortunate now that I have the memory that's so tainted. I always can't help but picture her lying there on that floor in that living room, fighting for her life. And I always think of that moment because I can only think that she must have thought of us in that moment, knowing that her life was fleeing away from her, and how desperately she must have thought, someone save me, knowing it was her husband that was doing this to her. I can't shake that moment from my head at all. It's just there forever to stay. I wish it would go away, but it just doesn't.
I want to be strong, and I want to be living the way I used to, even though I know that it's not possible, but I want to be strong. This is the worst thing that could happen on this planet, and it's happened to me and to this family. I do not want this to happen to nobody.
Even to this day, every day, and every time I think of her, there's a part of me that feels so much guilt inside of me that I couldn't do anything to affect a change. I didn't notice what was going on, but obviously there's no going back. There's no changing or undoing what's happened. But you've still got to live every day with that guilt inside of you, and somehow reason with it as well.
This program is rated 14+ and contains scenes of violence and mature subject matter. Viewer discretion is advised.
There were obvious traumatic injuries to the victim. I'd never seen a beating that bad.
That level of hatred was next level. I've never seen anything like that before or since.
Through this ordeal, I've lost many nights of sleep thinking about it.
I think the randomness really struck everyone involved, but here we didn't have any motive.
Watch out, now is the time, watch out for Mr. Big.
All your friends that you met, they're not your friends, they're my friends. They're all police officers.
This is evil, hatred, and pure violence at its most disgusting. It's terrible.
It completely changed the way that I see the world.
Welcome to Crime Beat. I'm Anthony Robart. Tonight, when a kind-hearted, loving family man is found viciously beaten to death, the case becomes a true murder mystery. Investigators used every strategy they had to identify who was responsible for the senseless attack. Here now is Nancy Hicks with Face to Face with Evil.
In the fall of 2010, a woman walking to work in an older residential neighborhood in Northwest Calgary cut through the parking lot of a small strip mall. It was still dark outside when she came across a disturbing scene. She called 911 and described what she saw. A man lying in a pool of blood, his body battered and beaten beyond recognition. Constable Greg Alsop was one of the first officers on scene.
Just before 9 a.m., we got a call, dispatch on the radio saying that there's a 1043, which is a check on welfare. There's a male in the parking lot here, covered in blood and laying on the ground unresponsive. The victim's vehicle was parked in the parking lot, nosed into a stall, and when you come around to the passenger side of the vehicle, the victim's body was laying on the ground. The passenger side of the vehicle was completely covered in blood, as if he was trying to get into the vehicle, but obviously couldn't make it and ended up deceased on the ground. We followed the trail, which came through the parking lot, up these stairs, and into the back alley here. And then there was a large pool of blood, and the victim's belongings, wallet and car keys and stuff were all laying here on the ground. Definitely didn't seem like a robbery. Nothing was taken. I mean, easily could have taken the vehicle, taken the wallet, anything, but everything was just left. It just seemed very random.
Above the blood-soaked pavement, officers noticed fresh paint on the side of the building.
There's fresh graffiti on the wall, and there was a Nazi swastika, freshly painted, sometime that evening, I guess. But it was the freshest out of all the graffiti on the wall.
Officers radioed back to their sergeant.
Obviously, it was suspicious, just given the level of violence that happened to that man. So at that point, then it's now securing the scene. Once everything was secure here, we started going door to door in the neighborhood, knocking on doors, and just talking to homeowners and residents just to see if they heard anything. People were starting to give us tips of, well, there's this house over here, has some undesirable people living in it.
All possible leads were passed along to the homicide unit, including Detective Dave Sweet, the primary investigator assigned to the case.
I do remember attending the scene that day, later that morning, to have a look around. There was a wallet with identification in it in the alley near to where the body had been found, along with some car keys. And the assumption is that the wallet belonged to the victim that was found a short distance away. And in that wallet, there was identification in the name of Mark Mariani, who was a male that was about 47 years of age at the time.
At that same time, across town, Mark Mariani's family was searching for him. He'd gone out with friends the night before and never came home.
My brothers went out to go look for him because my grandma had called and said he didn't come home the night before, which was very unusual for him.
My mom asked us to go take a look, so my brother hopped on our motorcycles and kind of went to around where he was living and where he kind of frequented.
It was when we were riding around a neighborhood in the Northeast when my dad called me, and we were trying to search for him, and I have a Bluetooth headset in my helmet, and I answered it, and all I heard was screaming. It sounded like a war zone was going on in the background. There was screaming, crying, and I could tell my dad was fighting back tears, and he told me that they had found him murdered and that we needed to come home right away. And just hearing my mom screaming, and after my dad said he was murdered, I almost crashed my motorcycle because I just went black. And I don't even remember getting home.
Nothing could have prepared Mark Mariani's family to learn of the horrific fate he suffered.
And it hit us. I don't even know how you can describe it. Kind of being in a black tunnel.
Welcome back to Crime Beat. The brutal beating and stomping of Mark Mariani was one of the most horrific assaults that seasoned investigators had ever seen. And with no obvious suspects, police had their work cut out for them. Here again is Nancy Hicks with Face to Face with Evil.
On October 3rd, 2010, at 2:26 a.m., Mark Mariani was captured on CCTV pulling into a Northwest Calgary strip mall. He got out of his SUV and entered a business. About 20 minutes later, he left the store, got into his vehicle to leave, then for some reason changed his mind. He got out and walked a few steps into an alley behind the strip mall.
The alley was very dark at that time. The cameras didn't capture sort of the mouth of the alley or the steps up into the alley. So once he moved away from that camera, we didn't see him again, and we never did truthfully ever see him return.
About 6 hours later, Mark Mariani was found beaten to death.
Mark's injuries were indicative of a very violent attack, a very violent beating that made him nearly unrecognizable to the picture that we had of him from his driver's license. You couldn't put the photo to Mark and say that they were one and the same person.
The medical investigator attended the scene with us and determined that it was indeed a suspicious death. I videotaped the scene prior to it being photographed.
Police examined multiple scenes. The first was where Mark Mariani was found outside of his SUV.
On the vehicle in the ground, there was just a lot of blood down the side of the vehicle, and it appeared that he was trying to get into his vehicle.
They followed a trail of blood through the parking lot, up a few stairs, and around the corner to the side of the strip mall.
In the alley on the north side of the strip mall, there was a lot more blood where the assault had taken place. There was blood projected onto the wall of the strip mall, and there was also, it appeared to be like a boot mark that was left on the wall.
And it certainly appeared to us were consistent with a stomping type action where the toe of the boot or the footwear was running and rubbing up against the wall as the boot was coming down. And it left behind basically particles of rubber.
One of my investigators took a regular swab and swabbed it vigorously to get enough material onto it.
Police also noted and photographed the wall where the beating happened.
It seemed to be swastikas and similar type images.
Forensic investigators were meticulous in gathering evidence.
Across the alley, there was a newly constructed house that wasn't occupied, and on the back step and patio, there was some cigarette butts and some beer bottles, and that was within direct sight of that wall. I directed my guys to seize them and examine them. You never know what's going to be involved or what's going to be relevant, so you collect everything and then send away the irrelevant items.
The last spot they searched was the roof of the strip mall.
It's funny, almost every single scene that we do, if there's a roof, we search it. That is the only scene I can remember ever finding evidence at. So you do it because there might be evidence there, and in this case, there happened to be something there.
So we have a witness saying, hey, I heard people in the alley that night. This is kind of the approximate area where they were. We had another witness say, I heard strange noises noises from the roof that night. And up on the strip mall roof, what we found was a can of red spray paint.
As homicide detectives worked through the early stages of the investigation, officers met with Mark Mariani's family.
People don't understand what it's like to go through a murder in the family, and everything feels foreign and everything feels wrong and upside down, and things happen so quickly that you don't have a chance to really catch your breath, and your brain can't process exactly what's happening to you.
We were ushered into vehicles and straight up to police headquarters. We didn't know any information as to what had happened.
We learned through family that Mark, as a profession, had started to try and help people with some of their legal matters.
So Mark was a real champion for rights, people's rights, and the letter of law. He found a way to help people, and not for profit, but because that was the right thing.
He was helping me actually get out of a motorcycle ticket. Funny enough, that was the first ticket I had ever gotten, so he was just explaining how we could go to court and plead it down. He was trying to help other people out with tickets as well, so.
We also knew that through that work, Mark had interactions with others that were doing the same thing, that the family, in a couple of instances, were a little suspicious of. And so the names of those individuals were provided to us, and they became people that would need to be spoken to and call them people of interest.
At 47, Mark Mariani lived with his parents. His health had deteriorated after suffering from Crohn's disease for more than half of his life.
Growing up, he was, the big, tall, barrel-chested, chubby kid, 240 pounds, 6'2", to the point where when it was ravaging him and it was hurting him, he was down to 140 to 160 pounds, frail 95% of the time. It was always in pain, to the point where, he couldn't stand straight, couldn't walk properly, couldn't function. Eating was a chore. Going to the washroom was a panic all the time.
On October 1st, 2010, doctors gave Mark new hope that he wouldn't need his colostomy bag anymore. 2 days later, he was found murdered.
Something we speculated was maybe potentially one of the reasons Mark had gone into the alley that night was to relieve himself, essentially, because it was very uncomfortable for him because of the Crohn's disease.
Police quickly ruled out robbery
because of the fact that the contents of his pockets seemed to have been spilled out into the alleyway. Nothing appeared to have been taken from the wallet. The wallet looked like it had just been discarded. Credit cards were still there, bank card was still there. There was no indication at all that anything had been taken from the wallet.
But investigators struggled to come up with a motive.
I had a victim that had been randomly attacked, had been stomped and kicked to death. I'd never seen a beating that bad at that time in my career. And I would be hard-pressed to say since that point in time either.
On Monday, October 4th, 2010, an autopsy was completed at the Chief Medical Examiner's office in Calgary.
I attended the autopsy with my investigators, and during that we take photographs at the direction of the medical examiner, and there were obvious traumatic injuries to the victim, to his head, and to his arms and upper body.
Mark had suffered a variety of injuries that were consistent with being beaten to death. A number of those injuries also were consistent with being caused by either the heel of a boot or the toe of a boot. Mark had significant fractures in his skull and a number of broken bones.
The official cause of death was blunt force trauma.
The victim's clothes were so blood-soaked, so we took the clothing back to the forensic building, dried it, and then we're photographing it more carefully. One of the investigators noticed that one of the stains appeared to be paint instead of blood.
Flecks or spatters that we could see that had been sort of transferred onto Mark's jacket. It suggested that when Mark's attack had occurred, that Mark had come in contact with wet red paint, in fact.
Again, investigators investigators went back over tips gathered by the first responding officers who had gone door to door.
This officer, a very diligent officer, he knocked on the tenant that lived above, who advised the officer that there was a group of skinheads that was living in the basement of that home, and that individual believed that they must know something about what had happened.
The house in question was just a few doors down from where Mark Mariani was beaten and killed.
The name Robert Reitmeyer to me didn't mean anything. But this officer, because of previous dealings with Rob, he was aware that he was somebody that was purported to be part of a hate group known as the Western European Brotherhood. Somebody that was known to walk around with big heavy boots.
Officers reviewed CCTV surveillance video from businesses in the strip mall. Robert Reitmeyer was captured on video with two other people in a nearby liquor store at 1:12 a.m., about an hour and 15 minutes before Mark Mariani arrived at the strip mall. They made a purchase and left a couple of minutes later. The rental car business captured them next as they headed northbound towards the alley.
And he's wearing those big boots. And he's with a friend who we later go on to identify as Tyler Stirrup. Rob Reitmeyer and Tyler Stirrup are associates to one another. They purport to be part of the same hate group. Both Rob Reitmeyer and Tyler Stirrup both did have criminal records, and both were known to the police.
In 2006, Robert Reitmeyer was charged with attempted murder. That charge against Reitmeyer was stayed in 2007, which essentially ended the prosecution.
I also know that Reitmeyer had been targeted in a shooting at one time in downtown Calgary, and the bullet missed him and struck a poor gentleman walking down the road, and making him blind. One thing that didn't make any sense at all is when we looked at Mark Mariani, and if you're going to contemplate that a white supremacist group is going to be a part of this murder, Mark clearly appears to be a Caucasian male. It sort of flies in the face, I guess, of what we would typically associate if white supremacist groups going to be violent. You know, our assumption usually is that they're going to be violent against non-white people. So it was one thing that made us, question what would their actual motivation be for even carrying out this attack.
Police worked to eliminate other persons of interest and pored over Mark Mariani's banking records and final footprints of life.
He had been at a country bar. Then we knew that he had gone into the store because we had video of him inside the store, and we knew that he had left the store. And that's where his timeline ends. There were several early investigative theories that I was working on. Over the course of the first week, I think we identified potentially 18 people of interest. But what was amazing about this is as we went through this list of people, and each person was cleared or alibied and cleared through an investigative process, the case against Rob Reitmeyer became infinitely stronger. Because ones that you can't clear and you can't alibi, the case against them just by virtue becomes stronger.
But if Reitmeyer and Stirrup were involved, police would need further evidence.
We go and we start to try and collect information that will either prove or disprove the possibility that he is involved. And that includes things like utilizing surveillance resources, collecting garbage. In Reitmeyer's garbage, we did not find bloody weapon or clothing, but what we did find were these graffiti doodles. Basically scraps of paper that people had just been doodling on. So now we knew with some level of certainty that at least some of those tags that we had seen on the wall of the crime scene had been made by people that lived in the residence that Reitmeyer lived in. We knew that we had them on video. We searched social media accounts, and we read their comments and some of their posts. We saw that they had an interest in graffiti. There was some vile talk about, particularly on Reitmeyer's account, about curb stomping people when they talk to you. These were things we we saw on the social media, everything was hedging now that they were our suspects. And so I actually made a presentation towards the tail end of 2010 to the Crown Prosecutor's Office.
Detectives were told they needed more evidence.
So we begin an investigation in the shadows.
Months went by and there were no arrests in the murder of Mark Mariani. The homicide unit had Crime Stoppers film a reenactment in hopes of generating further tips in the case. Mark's 3 siblings went to the alley where he was killed. They watched as actors played out the violent attack.
He died for what? It's senseless that, he would have given the shirt off his back to those people. So please do the right thing and come forward to the police with the information that you have so that my family, our mom and dad, and my kids, we can all, understand, and put an answer to why Mark died.
As the investigation continued, police began receiving results of forensic testing on several exhibits seized from the murder scene.
We knew that when Mark's jacket came in contact with red paint, and because we knew that red paint came from that spray paint can, we were able to do testing through the manufacturer on dry times of that paint, and we knew that paint dried within 7 to 9 minutes of it being applied to that wall, which meant that whoever applied that red paint to the wall had done so within 7 to 9 minutes of Mark entering into the alley that night. The red paint found on the wall matched to the red paint found on the jacket, which matched to the red paint found in the spray paint can recovered from the roof.
It was actually kind of frustrating because there was a very poor quality fingerprint that was found on the spray paint can, and it wasn't high enough quality to ever be identified. There was also DNA that was recovered on the spray paint can, and that wasn't sufficient for analysis. The cigarette butts and swabs from the beer bottles that were across the alley were sent away for analysis, and there was DNA on there that linked to the suspects.
At one point, Robert Reitmeyer was questioned by police for possible involvement in property offenses involving graffiti. A warrant was executed at his mother's home where he lived. At that same time, both Reitmeyer and Tyler Stirrup were targets of covert police strategies, including wiretaps.
They'd be like, sweet. What worries me is the fact that when the cops just raided my house for graffiti, you know what I mean? Yeah, so what? So they can't even connect that though. How can they actually, factually, forensically connect that? They can't. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, other than that, they got nothing. But it's just, the anxiety they got about it. Well, obviously, dude, when I first opened the paper, and the head the title, lead in random killing, I was like, holy like, no way. My stomach kind of dropped a little bit there for a second. Yeah, then I read the article, I was like, joke, nonsense. You know what they're doing? They're just trying to make it to the family. Because I bet you the family's harassing the cops, like, guys. Just trying to make it to the family so it looks like they're doing something, right? They're not doing they got nothing.
Police obtained warrants to surreptitiously seize Reitmeyer and Stirrup's boots for testing, which were then returned. Then, in early 2011, Stirrup met some new friends that were a part of a criminal organization involved in street violence. What he didn't realize was that it was a fictitious organization, and his new friends were actually undercover police officers.
Tyler Stirrup and the undercover police officer developed a trust and a bond, and he decided that on one given day he was going to tell the undercover police officer what he had done.
You need a scare.
It's total risk. Going too far. Little accent.
Oh.
Little too good at what we do sometimes, I guess.
So you piss on your guys' work and...
Yeah, you got dying work. I broke punched him once in the jaw and he hit the floor and it was all boots from there. Just boots. Girls getting at shoe party. Well, when we left, he was barely, he stopped breathing.
Heavy.
Started kicking him again, he started breathing. And we just kept jumping on his head. My bro kept putting his hands on my shoulders and jumping off the whole feet. We went for a good 5 minutes of straight boots. To the head, body, everything stopped. Two of us, both feet in there, like a pit bull on a steak.
The undercover operation ultimately, I think, led to the justification for why this occurred to be simply because they could. A disgusting reason. But it truly was as a result of Mark Mariani entering into the alley that night. Two men, hateful and full of rage, who had been drinking, fueled an attack against Mark that ultimately took his life for no good reason other than they could. And that's probably the most chilling reason and explanation for what could have occurred. Tyler Stirrup likened it to two pit bulls on a stake. And that, I think, sort of speaks to what the motive was. And the motive was, there was no motive. It was just to be able to do it. I think and giggles was something else that was used at one time.
You can make drafts, stuff like that.
Only me and my bro and you two know about it.
Okay.
My brother's my brother, man.
Well, don't worry, it's me leaving this room.
2 days later, police monitored a call where Stirrup warned Reitmeyer not to fall victim to an undercover police operation.
Also, another thing, Mr. Big, you gotta start being real careful about you.
I know. Yeah.
Watch out, now is the time, watch out for Mr. Big.
Yeah, agreed. 100%.
They got absolutely nothing but Mr. Big.
Especially with all
That's the only option they could ever pin us with.
Especially with all these new guys floating around us now.
On May 31st, 2011, nearly 8 months after Mark Mariani was killed, both Reitmeyer and Stirrup were taken into custody.
They were arrested or provided their conversation to a lawyer, and in prior to being formally charged, which they got to go through our arrest processing, have a bail hearing to be formally charged, but in between that time, we conduct interviews. The police have an opportunity to conduct an interview.
Reitmeyer refused to speak. Tyler Stirrup was interviewed by Calgary Police Detective Mike Shute.
For Tyler, like I remember, put my hand out, shake his hand, and he had his arms full of me. He couldn't be more tight than what he was at that moment. But I didn't take my hand away. I'm like, you're shaking my hand. And, I waited, not long, but it was a socially awkward pause. But he reached out and he shook my hand. And that's the part where, as an interviewer, we're going to help control that environment a little bit.
The interview went on for hours, and slowly, the detective began presenting their evidence against him.
The investigative side, who we spoke to, the witnesses, we had some CCTV, but it wasn't fantastic CCTV. Some of the key evidence that we had was regarding the spray paint can, the spray paint graffiti, and the transfer of that spray paint over to Mr. Mariani's clothing. So, those were pieces that I was able to present to him to see if he was going to provide any information. But Tyler didn't provide any information. He, stuck to, I'm not going to talk about this. I'll wait for my lawyer.
The officer played some of the conversations that had been recorded between Stirrup and Reitmeyer.
Yeah, I just had the Calgary Global News on.
And then, Detective Shute told Stirrup he was the subject of a Mr. Big sting operation.
I think for him it was a bit of a shock, and he's trying to replay really fast his last couple of months of his life and everything that he did and he said and where he went. And I just said to him, I said, Tyler, like, all your friends that you met, they're not your friends, they're my friends. They're all police officers. So it was a hard shock to him that he had become subject to an elaborate undercover operation. And provided that information to us. I think he knew it was a heinous crime, and morally he knew that was wrong. Did he have remorse? I don't believe that for a second.
After the interview, both Stirrup and Reitmeyer were taken to arrest processing, where they would be formally charged. Their conversations en route were recorded.
Mr. Big. Shit, don't better trust me. Here I am telling me to be careful, Mr. Big. I think it's Mr. Big. Yeah.
Both Tyler Stirrup and Robert Reitmeyer were accused of the second-degree murder of Mark Mariani.
Nancy, what are you learning about their history?
Robert Reitmeyer and Tyler Stirrup are best known for their affiliation with white power groups in Calgary. The two are believed to be leaders of the Webb, or Western European bloodline. Reitmeyer was charged with attempted murder in 2006 after a man's skull was cracked open. Those charges have since been stayed.
Nancy, what are police saying about the motive in this case?
Police say they believe this was a completely random attack. They say Mariani was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it could have been anyone. It just happened to be that Mariani was the victim.
Welcome back to Crime Beat. An undercover police operation revealed a senseless motive for the violent murder of Mark Mariani. But would the evidence be enough to convict the pair of self-proclaimed neo-Nazis? Here now is Nancy Hicks with a conclusion of Face to Face with Evil.
Days after Robert Reitmeyer and Tyler Stirrup were arrested and charged, Mark Mariani's family invited journalists into their home. They stood together facing a wall of cameras to talk about Mark and how their lives had changed since he was so brutally killed.
Through this ordeal, I've lost many nights of sleep thinking about it.
I don't consider them men to beat up one person who's underweight and can't even defend himself.
If I know my son, he would have called for Mom, Dad, Kathy, and his brothers to have some help.
This was nothing more than pure evil at work, and what really saddens us is that he died alone in a parking lot, and we couldn't be with him.
When Mark passed away, he took him away. He wouldn't let me go and hold and just comfort and hope. He wouldn't let us do that.
They took some solace in knowing the accused killers would face the justice system.
I think there are two striking things about the case. One was that Mark Mariani was totally unknown to these people. They had absolutely no reason to become angry with him or to have a grudge against him. And the other thing was just the savagery of the beating. The best pieces of evidence we had were the trace evidence and the intercepted communications.
Reitmeyer and Stirrup were supposed to stand trial together in March 2013, 2.5 years after Mark was killed. But given Stirrup's admissions in the undercover operations, he made a last-minute plea.
Guilty plea today in the death of a 47-year-old Calgary man more than 2 years ago.
That plea took Mariani's family by complete surprise. They were prepared for a lengthy second-degree murder trial, but today Tyler Stirrup admitting to the unprovoked beating death of Mark Mariani.
It was a shock that this turned around like it did today.
It was a random attack, Stirrup and another man repeatedly kicking and stomping Mariani. He died of severe head injuries. Today, Stirrup, the former white supremacist, addressing the court and offering an apology to the family.
The only thing that he offered, and as I indicated to the court, is that this was senseless. It was unfortunate. If he could turn back the clock, he would.
I want to believe it. I want to accept it. I want to have faith in humanity, but I've lost some of that faith.
The Mariani family providing victim impact statements to the court today, describing Mark as a kind and tender heart, saying they would not even wish this kind of a loss on Tyler Stirrup himself. Stirrup was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 10 years. The trial for the second man accused of this murder, Robert Reitmeyer, is scheduled to begin in the fall. Stirrup later appealed his sentence, but it was dismissed. Then, in November of 2013, just over 3 years after Mark's death, Robert Reitmeyer stood trial in front of a jury. It's believed that this was a completely unprovoked attack, the Crown outlining its case today to the 12-person jury made up of 9 women and 3 men. It will be up to that jury to decide if Robert Reitmeyer is guilty of second-degree murder.
The worst day of our life was 3 years ago, and today's the second worst day because we have to start this all over again. We just still don't know why. We want answers why Mark had to die that day.
The Mariani family told us they plan to come to court for every day of the trial. They want to ensure that justice is served. The trial is expected to last 3 weeks.
The evidence against Mr. Reitmeyer really boiled down to 4 things. One was we could prove that he lived in the vicinity of where the murder took place. We could prove because of a statement that he made that he had painted the graffiti that was at the location where Mr. Mariani died. And because there was a red stain
on Mr. Mary's jacket, we could prove that he had been in the area right around the time the graffiti had been painted, because it appeared that this had smudged off the wall. And then there was a black smudge on the wall, which suggested someone had used a kicking motion, and the material from that smudge matched material that was obtained from boots seized from Mr. Reitmeyer. And then finally, and most importantly, we had private communications between he and Mr. Stirrup that were intercepted, and those did not involve direct confessions, but they certainly indicated the comments of someone who was well aware of the details of the crime and was afraid they were going to be charged for that crime.
Yeah, we'll never be in jail for us, my life. Okay, I'm looking at I'm waiting for today. My daughter's gonna come fucking kick down.
The prosecution was not allowed to talk about Reitmeyer's association with white power groups or refer to his countless tattoos.
He was so heavily tattooed, there was no way that Mr. Reitmeyer could have hidden all of his tattoos, but he did try to hide some of them with high collars and things of that sort. But he had the SS tattoo on his cheek, and there was really nothing he could do about that. Now, we didn't comment on that at all, but we knew the jury would be looking at those things.
Today, the Crown pointed to multiple conversations between Robert Reitmeyer and Tyler Stirrup. The intercepted conversations were played during the trial, including this conversation that was recorded 8 months after Mariani's death.
Yeah. Oh, I think this is names on their words.
Yeah, there's all these actually pretty close.
Yeah, but they went straight up on it.
Yeah, it's literally this is part of the crowd.
They was trying the worst possible thing. It always gets knocked down a bunch.
Yeah. Once it goes, it gets knocked down for a second, it goes next order.
Today, the jury heard from the defense. In closing arguments, Reitmeyer's lawyer claimed there is no compelling evidence that could convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that Reitmeyer was at the scene or involved in the attack on Mariani.
The jury decided that the Crown had proven that Mr. Reitmeyer was an active participant in the murder of Mr. Mariani. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. His parole ineligibility was set at 13 years.
Reitmeyer appealed both his conviction and sentence. Both were dismissed. The Court of Appeal described the crime as a murderous assault of a defenseless person by two strangers simply for the fun of it.
Yeah, I think the randomness really struck everyone involved. Usually it may not be a sensible motive. It may be fueled by alcohol or something like that. But here, we didn't have any motive.
Not long after the court process finished, Mark's mother passed away.
I think that's what killed her. I think that's why she died. She couldn't understand, and she couldn't let go, and the pain was too much. And I see it in my siblings, and my nephews, and my niece, my brother-in-law. I see it. I see the pain, and I see how it's affecting them, and I see how, whether they admit it or not, I can see the pain. And it ages you, and it turns a bright spirit into less.
Now, almost 15 years after Mark Mariani was murdered, both of his killers are eligible for parole.
I think Stirrup is just violent by nature, but I get the feeling that he's kind of a follower and doesn't really understand what he's doing or how he's doing it, even though he does. The thing with Reitmeyer is that he's the mastermind. He's the conniving one. He's the smarter of the two, I think. This is evil, hatred, and pure just violence at its most disgusting.
He murdered my uncle in cold blood in the most brutal way possible. So why does he get to have a second chance? And he's going to have a second chance to potentially harm someone else.
It's disgusting. Deep down to the core of who they are is terrible. Their belief system is just full of hate. My fear is if they get out, that they'll try try and track us down and find us, or they might just pass some poor innocent person on the side of the road and victimize them.
Tyler Stirrup was eligible to apply for day parole in 2018, but so far hasn't sought release. In January of 2025, the Parole Board of Canada granted Robert Reitmeyer a 60-day unescorted temporary absence and stated, quote, he would not present an undue risk to attend a program 4 days a week. Reitmeyer said in his free time, he plans to work out and experience Victoria. The Mariani family does not support the leave. They still struggle with the devastating loss, but try to focus on keeping Mark's memory alive. Thank you for joining us tonight on Crime Beat. I'm Anthony Robart. Want more episodes of Crime Beat? Listen to the Crime Beat podcast now for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your favorite podcast. And for past episodes of Crime Beat, go to the Global TV app, visit globaltv.com, or check out our Crime Beat YouTube page.